it was that moment when I really, really had to ask myself, is this the thing that you are set on doing? And other friends also said, should you go and get a job? You know, your responsibility is to your daughter. Maybe it's not the time. And that probably is the time I realized it was most of the time that I had to do it.
Hi, I'm Sally Christensen, the founder and CEO of Argent, a women's workwear brand. And this is Work Friends, a podcast for those who take their work, but not always themselves, seriously.
Work Friends.
Today, I'm welcoming the one and only Trinny Woodall. Trinny is a founder, CEO, author, podcast host, and something of a cultural sensation. She was one half of the duo behind the What Not to Wear series. The original one launched in the UK in the early aughts. For the past 8 years, she has been on a fascinating entrepreneurial journey with her namesake beauty brand, Trinny London. Since its launch, the breakout company has focused on women of all ages and not without major pushback. Now on Work Friends, Trinny Woodall. Trinny, hi, welcome.
Hi. We're already having a conversation. It's quite funny because it's like, do we need to just start again? Can we not just continue where we were?
Totally. I don't know that I want to publicly share all of the metrics of our business, but I do feel like those are the kinds of conversations that we are trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
The goal is just to have a raw and honest conversation about your story and what you're building. Mm-hmm. And but we like to start with an icebreaker. So.
Okay. What's yours?
I feel like you'll have a good answer to this.
Yeah.
I want to hear about your biggest oh no moment this week. What's gone absolutely sideways and how did you handle it?
God, this week, let me just try and think that one. Okay, I had one in the car right now. So we rarely do a sale. I don't like the concept of discounting, but for achieving a new customer to come in who maybe just needs that thing, we do about 10%, and we do 20% if you spend over a certain amount. So I'm not there, and we've had this conversation before about being in the weeds and being strategic. So I'm in the car on the way here, and I see that they mention the upside on the landing page, but when you go through checkout, it hasn't been mentioned again. Big miss. Big, huge miss. And when I look at scenarios like that, because we're now in head office 180 people, so you're not in the weeds, but a journey on something as important as a revenue driver today, which is going to be maybe 10% of our revenue this year or 5% of our revenue this year, it's really important. So I just think, okay, where was the miss? And at some stage, how do we unpack that so we don't have that miss again?
How far into the sale was this too?
This is halfway into the sale.
This is like a typical founder experience
where
you just have to take the punches.
You do. You have to take the punches, and you have to also, it's not about which, where you have your where do you interact and where do you just let the team get on with it? But you also want for that to be something where people understand. So it would be really good afterwards because we are tech enabled. So everything is, that sense of you do a wash up afterwards. You do something, do a wash up. What do you learn from it? Move ahead. It's a really great learning from tech teams to be implemented in the rest of a business. Mm-hmm. So because it just makes you say, okay, this has happened, but we can now it's finished. Let's look back and think, how do we do it differently? Instead of, I wish I would, I could, I should, which can be a language that doesn't get us anywhere, which I've in the past been in that, I wish we'd, it's so pointless.
This is one of my favorite sayings in business. It's good to have a short-term memory.
Yeah,
which I love, which I think applies here a little bit.
It's good to have short-term memory.
I think that is applicable to relationships, to business experiences, to failures, to punches, to hits.
Yeah, look ahead, don't look behind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I'm really excited to get into the meat of your story, but I really want to go back to the beginning and start from early age. Where did you grow up, and what was your upbringing like?
I grew up youngest of 6 kids. My dad married twice, and we moved abroad when I was about sort of 7, 8 years old. I went to a boarding school very early, quite a traditional thing in the UK, but even for a traditional British family, I went early. I went 6.5. And I didn't have necessarily the closest relationship with my parents. My siblings I did, but they were at different schools. And in midst of that, I went to a US school in Germany, an international school, but I did grade 5 and grade 6. And then I went back to the UK and did boarding school from 11. So I think my childhood was one of feeling isolated and the challenge of not knowing how to connect with people. And I think that's why, in a sort of 360 world, one of the most important things to me is how can we connect with each other as people? How can we have an emotional relationship quite quickly? And then many years later, I end up doing a TV show through a journey which took me via thinking I should be in finance, because my dad early on had good success, but later on had misfortune. So I saw that disappointment in somebody's 60s of looking back at the life they used to have and not seeing that life in front of them. I think you take things on when you're a teenager, and you feel moments when perhaps one of your parents falls off their pedestal, and these things clock in our head of what, we just know these things, which is why maybe at 60 I'm only coming into my own now. I don't know if that has any reflection, but I think if I were to look back, there's something in that.
Yeah, I think that my parents were probably the most significant influencers over my work ethic, because you're just front row seat to it. I'm curious, though, since you went to boarding school at such a young age, you talked about your dad. Did you have other early examples of work, or anyone else that you're looking up to when you think about career?
I think my parents came of a generation and of a place in life where they didn't even suggest I should go to university. So there wasn't that sense of ambition. My mother was a stay-at-home mum. She'd always start things. She had so many businesses. Task in Germany, the Taunus Advisory Service Corporation. She had a second-hand antiques bin. She would start stuff and not finish it. And she did it because she just wanted to do something, and my dad worked. So I witnessed that thing of starting lots of things but never finishing them. So what's interesting is, what did I gain that was a positive, not a negative? So my dad did work hard. He was always away. My mum, I'm challenged to talk about my parents, interestingly, because they are people that I didn't have a really intimate relationship with as I grew up, because I didn't see them that much. I saw them probably 5 months of the year.
Well, you've had such a successful career. That's what makes me curious. And you started in fashion. So
Yeah.
Where did
fashion was the connector for me. Being at this school, living abroad, there were certain things I had that my friends didn't have. England, this is the 70s in England. It's a really backward place. I have nice writing paper in Germany, which you don't have in England. Or I used to write letters, so I would bring it back and I would barter for sweets, which I loved. So I kind of learned early this bartering system, and that was probably my first deal, is switching out my nice writing paper for sweets, which I wanted. And then that evolved to, I would be the ear piercer for girls. So I'd take antifreeze, which you do to, when a car is frozen and it freezes this thing,
I know antifreeze.
And then I'd get needles, which I'd sterilize, and I would pierce girls' ears. And the payment would be whatever I was bartering with at the time. So there was always this slight business moment. I sometimes had girls come up to me many years later saying, look at where the hole is now. So I had this in me. And then I finally left this boarding school. I'd had so many years of boarding school, I was like going to go insane. And at 16, I said, I've got to come to London. I come to London, my parents are still abroad, my sister's there, and I'm just like, whoa, big world. Go to a day school, and I do a Saturday job cutting meat at a delicatessen. Now, I don't know how I end up doing this, but my parents didn't give me much pocket money. So I could earn £28 a day, which is like $30, which seemed a lot of money. And then I would spend it all on cosmetics, because I had very bad skin. So I would save up and I'd buy different brands and do this stuff. So I did have this sort of Saturday job. And then when I finished school, my dad had this bad time. So I'd toyed with the idea of going to university. I liked the exoticness of going to a US university, which was quite unusual there. And I thought, I would like to go to Yale. No way would I ever get into Yale. But the idea was there, the assumption that why not try? And I didn't. And I went straight to work. And I worked in a commodities trading house, because I thought, let me learn about finance. Commodities trading houses is the arse end of finance, okay? It's physical trading. It's like there was a film called Trading Places, all right, with Eddie Murphy many years ago, all right. So
it's a great movie.
It's a really good movie, and I worked in cocoa. This young guy wanted to take over the cocoa market, and I was his assistant, and it was mad. From there, I went to do Anglo-American funds, and I was with 56 men and me. I was the only woman. I was appalling at it, hated the sales. We were selling Anglo-American funds. I learnt to swear really badly, which is why I swear quite a lot now. And my parents couldn't understand what had happened to me. They would, I'd come home and they'd just say, "What is this person?"
According to the memes I'm getting fed on Instagram, means that you're good at business if you swear a lot.
Oh, really? Are you? What memes are you getting that I'm not getting?
I don't know. I also
Instagram
swear a
must
lot.
hear on the algorithm how much I swear because there's so much beeping on my stories, and yet it's not behaving, the algorithm. It's not sending me the same memes as you.
I don't know. I think it's because it's sometimes the most efficient, effective form of communication.
Yeah.
How did you? So I imagine this is because you watched your dad in finance, so you just.
I think I wanted him to notice me. That he had lots of children. He was not that. He wasn't that present. So anyway, I then did this for a bit. Didn't really like it. I think in between, actually, when I was at the last year of school, I did a business which was selling hair bows, and I had them made by some ladies. I bought these brooches in Portobello Market, and Princess Diana used to wear these big hair bows, and everyone loved them. So we made them and we sold them to Harvey Nichols, and we walked the streets and sold these things. So I quite loved doing that.
Yeah.
And then my friend at 18 went to art school, and so I was suddenly Bows Unlimited no longer existed. And so then about a year and a half later, I think I'd done the finance for a bit, and I started another business because I thought there is a need for socks for men. And by this stage, I think I'd done a year of the commodity trading. I was like, do I really want to do this? But I had lots of friends in the city. So I thought, they all need socks. They always talk about, I can't find the other sock. So I got very pretty girls with very good legs. And I had lovely baskets. And I went to this Eastern European manufacturer of socks called Barter. And I bought socks wholesale with a friend of mine. And the girls would go in looking gorgeous, and they'd sell socks on a trading floor. I mean, they'd make £300 in a day, which is like $1,000 nowadays. And for a while, it was phenomenally successful, and we were just caning it with the cash. But we were dealing with a very bad Eastern European sock company. So the glue went at the top of the socks. The dye ran in their wash, So we had this blast of 3 months of really great sales. And then the sort of complaints came in. So I learned a lot about customer service, or lack of customer service in that business. And product, and researching your product, and understanding origination of product, owning the supply chain. So that was really helpful.
This is great, though. So many founders that we do talk to have similar stories, myself included. I mean, I was selling.
Tell me yours. Yeah.
I was selling anything I could get my hands on. So I sold horseshoe picture frames. I hand painted
horseshoe picture frames. Were you a horsey girl?
I grew up on a farm.
Okay.
And so I had access to horseshoes, and I would glue them together, and I would cut out like a glass frame.
Yeah.
They're incredible. They're great, timeless.
And how many people have your collections? No, but I mean, what was the multiple on this? Did you sell one a day? Did you go around fairs?
No,
I
would go. Yes, I would go to festivals and fairs and sell them there. And then I also had a baking business that I would mail baked goods to people. I had a piggy bank business. I would hand paint piggy bank jars and sell them.
This is before you were what age?
This is all. I mean, starting around 5, 6, 7.
Amazing.
I just loved it. I just loved.
And did your parents encourage you?
Big time. My dad.
Okay.
So my dad. I'm a first generation immigrant. My dad's Turkish, and he grew up in the bazaars of Turkey, selling water from the age of 5.
Okay, so he really was a grafting.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I just would shadow him. So he sold rugs. He started a rug business here in the U.S., which is what you would expect. And I just shadowed him, and I think loved.
Salesmanship's interesting in this because my daughter's father was in the textile trade. He was Iranian Jewish.
Oh yeah.
And he came over and he sold to Liberties in London.
Yep.
But that whole tradesman, bartering, selling.
Yes.
So that's your father in you. What's your mother in you?
Totally. Mom grew up in South Carolina generations back, and she took care of us, but is so impressive. Raised us to basically, so I have an older brother, but raised me specifically to be independent. So the number one objective is to be educated and to be independently successful and not rely on anyone.
That's God help us, we should all have this mother.
But yes, I mean, she's incredible, a force. Now she's just lives at home and drives a tractor around and cuts grass all the time. But she's a force in her own right. So I've got them both in me. Okay, back to you. I want to talk about so I love all of these stories. I mean, there's so many parallels always we find in successful founders. But I'd love to hear about you getting your foot in the door in the fashion industry.
I think it was because I had always had this as a connection. So when I was still at that boarding school, I, by this stage, also had discovered a store called Benetton, which had not even come to the UK. But this is where I got an obsession, and I do this people say, what do you do in your downtime? Because you're quite manic. And what I do is I rearrange color coordination in jumpers. It's very, very peaceful and meditative. So they arrive, and there's this, first of all, I mean, it had a huge impact on me, if I really think about it. It was in the Brompton Road, and it was just these colours. And I bought quite a few of the things I'd saved up, and everyone wanted to borrow my clothes. So I then started styling people at school. And I went from feeling isolated and slightly alone to people wanting to be my friend. And that connection of feeling wanted, and somebody wants the advice you have inside you, is the biggest promoter of self-worth. It's astounding how much it can make you feel the value that you might have in your future. And that sparked my value. And before, I hadn't felt my value. I challenged every day of trying to make friends and finding a value. And so I got this. And then over the years, I did a few things. I did have also a dalliance with drugs. So from about 16 to 26, I was, I remember being in New York, scoring in Alphabet City. In the late 80s, New York was a really tough place. Going to the Milk Bar, really hit such an emotive low. And at 26, I took myself off to rehab, and I spent a year in rehab. So at 27, I come out, and rehab then was not getting clean, sober now. It was very raw. It was slightly, you were bad, let's make you good. There was an element of shame in it and punishing. So you start over and you're like this raw onion. And I had had a lot of balls before. I was always, even though internally I quivered a bit, people would always remember me in my early 20s as quite confident. But I had quite bad skin. I had a little elements there to lack my confidence. So I've sort of felt like this onion that layers had been shaved back. And I remember going down a street in London, and I had a panic attack. And I, first of all, didn't recognize what this was. I thought, what the fuck has happened to me, And it was just not having this protective layer that I didn't even recognize anyway who it was. I had got to a place where I didn't recognize who I was because I didn't know what was in there. So doing a year out in one's life at 26 really allowed me to think, okay, let me just sort of start to build a life on a foundation of bricks and not on quicksand, and before it had been on quicksand. So I started very gently. I did PR. I then did financial PR. I took what I could get. But all along, I had girlfriends coming to my house and coming to my bathroom saying, shall I wear this colour with this colour? Shall I... which skincare shall I buy? Which makeup shall I buy? And I loved it. And it was sort of, I did whatever day job I was doing, but I relished that feeling.
Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned having low self-worth. You have such standout qualities that I imagine you've had all along. Were you able to recognize some of those raw ingredients at this stage of your career?
I think then I recognized things because I found in rehab I could read people very well.
Yes.
And I think one thing I've always been able to do, sometimes when you're somebody who's quite quiet in the room, you can read people. I'm not so quiet in the room now, but there are times when I am also quiet in the room because I will have a multiple level awareness. So I will be listening to 5 conversations. And so that's always been there. And I think that was probably one raw talent of didn't necessarily react in the right way to a feeling that I might feel, but I really know I can read a sense of how people are feeling, not by what they're saying. So that's been probably my biggest thing that's been consistent. And when I then got clean and I thought, okay, let me make this a business, I came up with an idea for a column in a newspaper, and I had a lucky break. And with a girlfriend, we started something called What Not to Wear, which then was a column for a few years, then became a book, then became 11 books, then became a TV show. And then that was 15 years of my career. And that turned into doing what I loved. And when you get to a stage where you finally do what you love, the whole concept of what work represents in your life fundamentally changes, because you wake up and you're like, and I'm going to do this. This whole feeling is different from that graft and I've got to pay the rent. But then I come and I land in New York and I love the endless possibility of life.
Totally.
And I think that's so fundamentally brilliant about living in America.
That's the American dream, right?
It's the American dream. But I think the misalignment comes when I remember I would come with Susanna, who was my partner in the TV show, and we came over here and we were going to do the show in the US, and we spoke to ABC and TLC and all these companies, and in the end we were both pregnant and we didn't. But I remember when we then came back and we were going to do some stuff with Oprah. We'd started doing Oprah here, and we did, and Oprah was really interesting. I learned a lot about America through her, because she had little things she would do, and I was fascinated by them. So at the very beginning, because Oprah was Oprah, we would sit on the stage first, because it's always in front of a live audience, and then she would come in, because she was the star. But on our fifth time, we were allowed to come in. So I thought, okay, that's exciting. But she would, if we said something that she thought was a nugget, she would repeat it in some form 3 times to the audience, because it's like, hear it, listen to it, let it sink in. And I just remember that, how often she did that and how clever it was, and how she would reinterpret the words of somebody when she felt she could read the audience and understand what they needed to hear from this person in the room. So we were the sort of experts. We'd just done this What Not to Wear book. It had sold 1 million copies. We were taught the top of New York Times bestseller list. It was a kind of an interesting time. And she helped me to, and also a lot of people who come on the Oprah show come not just from Chicago where it's filmed, but they come from all around. So you really get a sense of the American woman. And the American woman interests me a lot more than the bi-coastal woman, much more, because the American woman is not as well served generally as the bi-coastal woman. And I think she has more meat on the bone sometimes. So I love the concept of how do you develop something like right now, this is my challenge, to really help that American woman.
Yeah, it's so interesting because there is this common thread of people and understanding people. And for me, I would say that is my superpower. And that comes from, I think, less pressure in childhood than I think we place on kids nowadays. But I went to college and really avoided the classroom and largely just spent my time having a good time and getting to know people. And technology wasn't what it is now. Yeah. And then in your 20s, I do think you're learning yourself and you're learning other people. And if you graduate to where we are now, I mean, it is the most important lever because it oftentimes is people's body language and not what they're saying. Because if you go to a different city, into a different culture, they're not going to communicate in the same way. So they might want to say something nice to your face, but they really don't mean, so it's
it's really seeing beyond those things. And I think when I did a show in the UK and then we took it abroad. And we took it abroad because we'd done 10 years in the UK and we were no longer Flavour of the Month. But it was the best experience because it went from being a show that was a sort of cultish show, very high following, to a show where it was very emotional. And I think for me, I then, instead of the mechanics of TV, which is to cut and make it look this and make it look that, these countries allowed for the show to be quite raw and allowed for everything to be a little bit more organic. And the art of a makeover show might seem incredibly trivial to some people, but the mechanics by which somebody can grow into themselves by outwardly feeling more confident are huge. And I think that's what then, in that process, I would always have different makeup companies. In Israel we had MAC, in Poland we had Ignot, we had all the different brands, and I would always have this team of young makeup artists and they would do exactly the same makeup on every person. And I was like, but, your skin, hair and eyes is so fundamentally different from your skin, hair and eyes. So you should have different stuff and it should go together and people need to know how to... So from that, the idea of Trinny London was born.
The newest pieces from Argent are the ultimate pairing of work and play. Our signature chic tailoring comes alive in lemon yellow, I'm wearing it now, and grass green, which might be my season's favorite. Plus, airy summer dresses serve as the perfect transitional staples, going from desk to dinner, work week to weekend, truly wherever your summer plans take you. As always, Argent fabrics are the biggest game changer in premium Italian seasonless wool, lightweight linen, and 100% cotton to ensure you feel as amazing and confident as you look. Shop all the latest arrivals, including the look seen on Work Friends at argentwork.com. It is so fascinating how perfectly your experiences set you up, I feel like, to start Trinny London. I do want to highlight something that you said that was really interesting to me. It's that women, or not just women, men and women, we get stuck in a place where we're not allowed to live in the space of dreaming and creating. Yeah. And you get stuck on, how am I going to pay for my next meal? How am I going to, just survive? And that's such a different existence. Right. And so it's such a gift to get to a place in your career where you can live in that creative space. Mm-hmm. And so it's so, just to go about it linearly. So What Not to Wear, it was just a column turned into a show, just breakout success fairly organically, it sounds like.
Yeah. Things always, when you look back, they seem quicker than they were at the time.
Totally.
I remember we did one book called Ready to Dress. It sold 13,000 copies, which at that time wasn't actually very many. Now book sales are different, but it wasn't very many. Then we did What Not to Wear, the first show, and then our agent said, why don't you do a book again? And we were like, okay, we could do the basic rules like a dictionary. So we literally did the basic rules, big boobs wear this, no boobs wear this, pear shape wear this, and we did these shapes and these rules, which I think I had known for years, but we just put in a book. And then we sold 1 million copies. And the impact then of TV on a book was huge. So from that, we then did another few book deals. We did more TV shows. So each year, I remember still feeling in August, will the show be recommissioned? Will I get another book deal? That never left, that feeling of, and the difference between I wasn't employed, but I was in a position of a contract, and it's, will the contract be renewed? And the shift to being an entrepreneur is, there's plus and minuses. You never stop thinking 24/7 about, I woke up at 4:30 this morning thinking about things, and then at 5 a.m. got up to do the sale, and then, you never stop thinking. You never switch off, but you are, to an extent, responsible entirely for the potential of your future. Mm-hmm. And even though you might be in that contract scenario, there could be a TV company that just thinks, oh, well, let's just try somebody else now. So whatever you do, you're pressing against something where you can't challenge it because you're not in control.
Totally. A shift of power happens. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I do think, though, that hunger is consistent. So I think there is a hunger and a desire in any job, in certain individuals, where it's, yes, I want my contract to be renewed, but here are all the opportunities that I want with that. When it's entrepreneurship, it's a moving target. So it's finding peace within your existence and happiness and fulfillment from it, and recognizing that it is going to be a moving target, and that's part of the journey, and try and enjoy the journey as much as possible. I think a lot of us lose sight of that because we're so focused on whatever that target is.
I think what you said also about creativity is interesting, because I was thinking when you said we can have time to be creative, but I think when you're deciding to be an entrepreneur, and there'll be people listening who might be in a job thinking, do I want to be an entrepreneur? And there's some people who I say, not in a derogatory way, but are you cut out that you will enjoy that life better? Or actually, will you enjoy the life you've got and you're just having a bit of a green fence moment because there's some challenges in your work? And I think it's a really important question to ask, because everyone otherwise will just, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to say, it's great, come over this side of the fence, but it's something where the freedom to be creative is constrained by, when I started Trinny London, I was in this home I'd saved up for, but I had a huge mortgage on because I so wanted to walk my daughter to work, and it was this picket fence home in London. And I got it when my salary was the biggest. And over that 2-year period, my salary went down. The interest in Susanna and I doing shows went down. I was going abroad to film on much less salary, and I couldn't afford my mortgage, and I wanted to start the business. So all those things were in conflict, because you want to give yourself this runway, that creative freedom to think, okay, what's it look and feel like? So it was juggling, keeping something afloat, being the main breadwinner, so keeping myself and members of the family afloat, and wanting to creatively have the headspace to think of the best way to grow this little embryonic seed into an idea that I could then at some stage raise money for, self-start, whatever, So that is a challenge, that journey.
Totally.
Yeah, we can't deny that it's just, let's have some creative thought now.
It is the most challenging part of my career. This
Mm-hmm.
is the last 10 years of building Argent for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything. I've learned so much from it. I've grown so much from it, but I would also argue that's a bit masochistic. Like my ability to hold stress is beyond, but the freedom that I have and just the opportunities that we've been exposed to as a result of this, the community that we built, the impact that we've had.
Yeah.
I think the advice that I typically give is as long as you have a commitment and conviction in your end goal, then do it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you won't make it.
Yeah.
It's just too hard. And I think you do have to be a bit naive.
I think a commitment and conviction in your own goal and an ultimate passion for it. That passion is when everything else, when the tank is empty, the passion is just saying, I'm still here, and it just will keep you going in those moments.
So it's 2017. You're talking about all the things that you're juggling simultaneously. You've accomplished so much up until this point. Why launch a beauty brand? What white space did you see? What are you trying to solve for? And what ultimately compelled you to do it?
Probably the white space was all those women I'd made over from 2005 to 2013 and their challenges. So the challenge of going up to the makeup counter and do I trust the person behind the counter? Are they too made up or are they not made up enough? Is the lighting going to help me? Am I going to be sold the wrong products? Do I know what suits me? I want to have a rethink, and is that person too old or too young to help me? So I actually... One of the fundamentals at the beginning was how can I take away that barrier? Because too much choice is paralysis for a purchaser. It doesn't help them cross the line and say, this is what I need. So I love tech. I'd started a business in 99, which was a tech-enabled business. It was a personalization business. E-com had not yet launched. It was a destination and a portal for women called Ready2. I raised $9 million in 6 weeks. This is .com boom. I was talking at symposiums on what e-com was going to look like. I mean, insane. All right, just insane.
Right.
But fascinating. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people at that time then continued in tech, and now they're in really interesting. There was a guy called Michael who now has Calm, which is a wonderful app. There's all these people who came out of it. And I went then into TV because it wasn't working. I had to give that business up. I had to get rid of 60 women who had had a job with us. I learned so much about what I wouldn't do. So when I started the idea for Trinny London, I thought, okay, I'm going to bootstrap. I'm going to only employ people who can just help me support my mission, not be somebody with really good knowledge, but the kind of really good knowledge in an industry I might be going into that will slant in the wrong way, because they'll bring their old ideas to something I want to go and switch up. So I then employed people, I had 2 assistants at the beginning. One helped me with social media. One helped me just, I had these women who would come in and help me brainstorm creative things. So a friend of mine who was in the advertising industry, another lady who ultimately was my first investor, of just what I wanted to do, which was to create something online where you could get makeup. It would be very easy to apply. It would be beautiful. It would stack together. You'd feel an expert without having to have gone to school. And it was not for women who wanted to do sort of Huda Beauty or Charlotte Tilbury, which had launched. It wasn't for that kind of full-on makeup. It was just for ease of looking in the mirror and feeling full of energy. That feeling of what you get when you just feel, I'm not tired, I'm fresh, right? So that was the principle of it. And so we sat in the basement of my house and we just sort of brainstormed and then slowly formed the idea. And then this woman came in and she'd researched, I said I wanted to do portable, personalized makeup that was easy to use, that was cream-based, etc., online, digital first. And she researched, and 4 of the trends I hate trends, 4 of the trends for the next 3 years were those four things. And so she said, I will take, in England, we have something called EIS, which is a way to invest in entrepreneurs through, if you're a high income earner, you can use the money that would go to the government against tax and invest in a business. It's something the US should do. It's a really good thing. And if the business loses and would fold, the most you would lose is 28% of your investment. But if it gains, you don't pay tax on the profit. It's a good thing. And you do it up to $150,000, and then you can do a 30% one up to 2.5 million. So my first little bit of money was 150,000. And I did this, and I did the prototypes. I found a place in Italy. I started mixing colors in my bathroom, and got people in, and very early stage of the business. And then I looked around me and I thought, I'm in a home I can't afford. It might be my dream home, but I can't stay in it. So I then thought, I'll rent it out.
Oh, so great.
So I rented it out. No, before I rented it out, I thought I'll do a sale of my clothes because I need to get a bit more cash in. So I did a sale of the clothes, and I thought, I'm renting it out so I don't mind who comes in my home. I had a bit of a profile in the UK, but I thought, I'll give my address to everybody. It's not going to be my home anymore. And so I raised money that kept me going for a year from that sale because I had a lot of clothes. I'd done 15 years in fashion. And then I rented a very small little sort of cottage in Fulham in London, and we started the business there. And then I moved in with my boyfriend. And then personal circumstances became quite challenging. And some things happened in my life which made me think, do I continue with this idea or not? And so I think I was too far into the idea to ever think, I'm going to not do this idea. And I knew I had to get rid of these things that the burden of debt when you're starting a business is really tough, and it does not allow you to focus. I had a mortgage. I wasn't earning enough money to pay the mortgage. The bank was going to come and say, sorry, honey. So I thought I have to sell the house. But the house was everything I had done for 20 years had gone into that house. All the money I'd earned had gone into that house. It was my, I'm 50, this is what I've achieved moment. And I was having to say, actually, I've got to be prepared to let go of that, because otherwise the potential of the future to me isn't there. And then my daughter's father died. So it was that moment when I really, really had to ask myself, is this the thing that you are set on doing? And other friends also said, should you go and get a job? Your responsibility is to your daughter. Maybe it's not the time. And that probably is the time I realized it was most of the time that I had to do it.
That's the test you're talking about when potential founders approach you. That's a really hard thing to articulate to people, just how dire your circumstances can become. Because you're not at all factoring that in, I think, because you're just going on passion and a dream and a white space, and it's a good business idea. But I think that is the reality, especially for female founders oftentimes. There were a couple of things that you touched on that I want to go a bit deeper into. So one was just about failure and having a failed company. What are the things, if you just could bullet them, that you learned from that?
Yeah. So never, I think, hire expertise that you think you don't have too early. You need to learn it yourself. If you're going to build a sustainably good business and you want to scale it, you kind of need to know what everyone's job is around the table. And it might be you're going in with a partner and they can know half of those people's roles and you know the other half. But if you're the CEO, you need to understand what tech does. You need to understand what marketing does, what new product development does, what support does, what back end does. You need to understand these things. So to hire in somebody who knows that, they will put their imprint on how they think it should be done. And also you won't learn as much because you'll then rely too early on something. And also it's a burden to the business. These salaries are expensive. But raw talent, if you can identify raw talent, and raw talent for me is a sort of desperate need to want to learn, an incredible grafting ability, hard work ethic, and an inquisitiveness, which is different from wanting to learn. It's inquisitive and challenging. So those few people who started were that, and they were much younger than me, But they had that passion and that core element of people. Some of those are still in the business today and run a team of people. Some have recently, they were sort of 5 years in the business, and in the last year, 3 of them left. And they were going on to new things, and I was sad to see them go. But I thought, my God, we've been such a part of where they're going to go to next. That's fantastic. It's like the finishing school for an earlier element of your career. And they've gone through tough times. They've had to learn stuff on the job. They've had to create their own role. They've had to build a team up, and so I love that journey. But at the very beginning, you need to know all these roles before you then give them somebody else to do. And you need to be spending as much time in the weeds as thinking, where do I want to be in 6 months? Where do I want to be in a year? So it's having your head half down and half up is important. You can't have it always down and you can't have it always up, because otherwise nothing is going to move forward.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
To say it differently, like I was really quick to give up my power early in the journey because I don't have a fashion background. I'm the consumer of what we're building.
Yeah.
And so many people, especially when it's a female founder, want to tell you how to do something or discredit you. And I think that there is a tendency to then try and hire the quote unquote expert.
Yeah.
And it's the total trap.
Yeah.
And then the other question I wanted to ask, because
And can I just say on that point too?
Yeah.
Knowing who the consumer is as important as knowing what the product is. And the two can't live without the other. But they are fundamentally, and that's something I think can be more unwavering, that you can know. I remember being in front of investors where they would say, oh, I love your idea, but anyone over 35 won't go online and buy makeup without trying it in store first, so you've got to do it for Gen Z. And I was like, no. And I left the meeting. I left lots of meetings challenging myself, oh my God. But that meeting I left and I thought, I know her better than you. And I know her better than you. And that's so reassuring when you've just had rejection.
Will you talk about those moments of doubt or regret that you've had, if you have had them? And I think most founders have had moments of, what am I even doing? Should I just give up?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this for?
Yeah, it's, I equate it to when I was trying to have a baby. And I did have a few challenges having a baby. And I have one wonderful child, Lila, who's 21. But I did about 16 rounds of IVF, and I lost some babies quite late too. But I never thought I would be a mother, but I never thought I wouldn't be a mother. And I sort of put my journey in entrepreneurship in that same bucket. I never woke up thinking, I just can't go on. But there were days I woke up thinking, I need to get the energy to get out of bed. And it just hovered, because if I had had days where I thought, I just can't go on, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, it is interesting. For the first time in my career, I really have to follow whatever energy is happening. So there are days where it's like everything is going my way, and there are days where I just need to disappear and everything's no and rejection.
And you just need to let it.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I must learn from you, because I will just then be like the dog with a bone, try and change the direction. But it's like Mel Robbins.
No, totally.
Let them.
Oh yeah, let them.
Let
it
them.
is. That is so accurate for me. It truly, there are days where I'm like, oh, I better get all of my asks out within the next 10 minutes because everyone's saying yes to me right now. Like something's working
That's
in
so
my favor.
interesting.
Yesterday was a really bad day where I just got a ton of rejection, and I was like, I've got to step away. I need to go organize my closet. I need to go clean the kitchen. We've touched on fundraising a little bit. I know that it's a very hot topic for female founders, especially. I have found that it's a hard conversation to have because no one really cares until they go through it and experience it. And it's a little bit of a losing conversation, but it's so broken. Women receive less than 2% of venture funding. I'd love to hear about your experience, any advice you want to offer. But I think for me, I'm very excited to know your numbers and watch your success and how much you've been able to accomplish with arguably not a lot of funding, I would say, for what you've been able to post. But it's just such a broken system.
I think there's two different aspects to this. One is we need more women in the VC world. 17% of women are on VC committees to do funding. So that needs to get up. So how do more women get into the VC market, and how do we get more LLPs that are full of women? So that's definitely one aspect of it. But I think also One thing I learned in recovery and going to rehab is sometimes you have to look at yourself as much as looking at what's around you. So sometimes I'd leave a meeting thinking those fuckers just didn't get what I was about. And other times I would leave and then I'd get the letter of rejection. And I would then email saying, could you just tell me why you didn't invest? And they might go back saying, well, the fund was out of, thing. And I was saying, and then I'd email back and I'd go, look, you saw me. So either you just thought, let's see that girl off the telly. And it was just vanity matrix, which, wow, thank you. Or you did have money there, but there's a reason you don't want to tell me, so please tell me. And some of them did. And some of the things were, I couldn't follow your story, or the figures were too low, or whatever it might be. This was a time of Casper mattress. It was a time of scaling. It was a time at the beginning of Glossier. So it was a time of don't give a shit about retention. It's all about new customer acquisition. It was about, on your numbers, you're saying 60% retention or 70% retention. I think I started with 70% retention, 30% acquisition. The market was saying 70% acquisition, 30% retention. I was saying, you can't build a business on that. It's crazy. But I wasn't, so certain things were, I was not talking how the market was talking. And all they were wanting to do is tick some boxes. So could I have talked more about what they did want to hear, that maybe I just didn't bring up? So being equipped to understand where is that venture investment market at the moment? What are the things they're talking about? They're all talking to each other. What are their concerns? What are their worries? What are their excitements? And just be aware of them. It doesn't mean you dovetail your bloody business into that, because that's crazy. But it means that you remember those points to bring out in a meeting more than the points you think they need to hear. Because I think as a woman, I want to go into a meeting and bring them into the world of Trinny London. I want them to just feel that vision. Now, if there aren't enough women in the room, men need to be taken through things methodically, generally. I'm sorry if there's men listening, but there is a fundamental reason there was a book written called Women are from Venus and Men are from Mars. And that's that element of how can I then go into the next meeting and say, first of all, we're going to do this. And when we've done this, we're going to go slightly to the right and do this. And then I could see, just their computation is different. We are multi-absorbers of information. And I think men generally like the methodicalness of this. And now I've fully comprehended that, and I'll go on to the next thing. So I had to learn to tell my story differently and not run in there so that it was overwhelming. Because we can be overwhelming. We have to forget how we can come across when we might be quivering with fear of will I get an investment is something that can be unnerving to somebody who's actually sitting there and doesn't quite know how to deal with it, or says, let me call in my secretary and see if she'd use your product,
Yeah. Okay. So this is such a beautiful answer. I think that every audience is looking for something different, and catering your message accordingly is like the takeaway I hope people have, because that is necessary in fundraising.
Yeah.
The other is it's important that we all get funded and get the money and figure out how to make that happen to change the numbers.
Yeah. But I would say there's an interesting thing about, there is another stat we don't talk about a lot of how much more women give away on the cap table at the beginning than men. All right.
So much more.
So there is an element here about if you cannot at some stage get investment, what can you sell? Are you prepared to mortgage your house? What are you prepared to give up for the gain? Because whilst you make those incredibly tough decisions, you have more opportunity to hold on to that controlling interest you need in your business, or majority shareholding you need in your business, or leading investor, leading on the cap table. Even if it's a 40%, you're leading on the cap table to give you that sense that what you want to execute on, you will have the ability to execute on. And it's not for everyone. It might be that you just need to raise at whatever the market value is in order to raise, especially if you've been going a bit. But if you are at the early stage, I remember listening to Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, Gary Vaynerchuk is a Marmite, you'd call it in England. Some people love him, some people don't. He mainly talks to sweaty young boys of 15 in a room. But there's things he says that really resonate. And I remember sitting in my entitled house in Notting Hill with this huge goddamn mortgage. And he said, what can you sell? What can you sell? Look around, what can you sell? And I thought, I can sell my clothes. I'll just sell my clothes. And just, there's things we think we can do, and then we can do more. And it's what's that little bit more that you're not thinking about yet? What are you prepared to put on the line that you haven't thought about putting on the line yet?
Well, and allowing yourself some runway to come up to speed on how am I going to fund this? Who's going to fund this? Do I have values aligned investors? And how do I minimize what I'm giving away?
Yeah.
And how do I maximize my exit options, essentially?
Yeah.
I do think, we just you're learning on the fly. It's why second-time founders are generally better off, because you just have to learn the hard way a lot of these things. But I do think that this is all great advice. So through Trinny London, you personally have grown such a massive platform on social media, including a series called The Elevator Pitch.
Yep.
What is it and why did you launch it?
I launched it because I felt, how can one give a platform to other female founders, and how challenging it is to get your voice heard. And I have a platform, and so I should use it. I have a platform that has just been, it originated in my just literally, I went to Facebook once and they said, just put your phone up in 2013 and just start chatting. And, I sort of was just chatting, and someone said, did you used to be Trinny from the TV? And I was like, yeah, hi, I'm in my bathroom now. And from that, then I think I've always been quite candid and raw. So I like this idea, and it's a challenge to fit it in. Sometimes you think, can we, like you do a lot, we discussed this earlier, you do a lot and you spread your time, but there's a reason you do this podcast, and it's that giving back, but it's more than that. It helps you. So when we did shout outs and we said, are you starting a business? Do you want to have an elevator pitch moment? So people would come to the office, they'd get in the elevator with me, and in 30 seconds, they had to tell me what their business was. And then we might have a chat afterwards. It would go on stories. We'd do a link to their business. A lot of women came in who had good ideas, and some of them have done really well, but a lot of them came in who you could look at and think, do you really want to be an entrepreneur? So then we put a criteria around it. We said, you have to have done $150,000 a year. You have to have more than one employee. Just like you have to, even that little stage between, I've got an idea, which is a reason I like to talk about my idea, because when I sit next to somebody at a dinner, I want to have something to say. There's entrepreneurs like that. They want to have a chat. And then there's people who want to do it and they're really grafting, and you see that grafting and you want to help them. But I don't want to help a woman who's thinking, oh, why not, little sideline? I'm not interested in helping that woman, because there's so many other women who need to have a little bit of we're actually doing elevator pitches, US one here. So we've got some women tomorrow who are coming in to the elevator at my hotel. We're going to do an elevator pitch in that and then put that on our channel.
I hope you get some guests joining.
Yeah, it would be fun. I do something also called Fearless Founders Dinners in London, which we do in the basement of our flagship. And we have different women. So we had CEOs, we've had interesting female founders. We're doing women in AI. Every few months we do a dinner, and it's fantastic. It's like we went to this breakfast this morning, and it's the idea that you can be the loneliest person in a room when you run a business and you're a founder, because you can't share everything with your team. And there's moments when you just need to think, am I making the right decision? And that support group of women who are on the journey with you, we would do anything to help those other people, because we know exactly how we're feeling.
You're speaking to, I think, the challenge of being a modern day founder too, but also the benefit of all these tools and resources that we have at our access. So it really is about figuring out how to build your business and maximize, what you're building, and simultaneously building up a community, lifting up others, sharing what we've learned, but also figuring out how to balance sharing yourself and your story and how much of that you're willing to share and give. And, there are a lot of...
I don't have boundaries on it.
Yeah, no,
I don't. I just sort of feel, I don't think I've ever been in an interview where I'd say, I won't answer that. I feel we have a responsibility to one another as women to be candid. We really have that responsibility, and it will help other women if one is, candor breeds candor. Yeah. And then we learn from people's candor. So it is a really important thing to do.
I think for women especially, and you touched on this early in the interview, we are existing in a patriarchy, so we do have to study people and observe and be 5-10 steps ahead at all times. And I also think we have to lift each other up. We are in a time where it's a mindset of abundance and all boats rise with the tide, and we need to come up together. And that really is the name of the game, is how do we share as many of these stories in an effort to allow someone else to have a shortcut from our missteps. How has being the founder of your beauty brand influenced how you view beauty, how you speak about it, and what it means to you?
I have time to answer this one. I think I recently did something with the team, which was writing a mandate for Trinny London, because we had a lot more people come in the business who weren't there when it founded. And this is something about scaling. Are you bringing your team on the journey of the principles in which you founded the business, the passion of that business, and where it's heading? So I felt, okay, I want a little reset, because there's some people going off in this direction and some people going off in this direction. So, we have this sense of what are the words we use around the business. We have clarity, we have integrity, we have energy. These are very strong words for us. The first and foremost thing is we want to help shift women a gear, whichever, we want to educate them. We want to let them know about things they might not yet know about. We happen to make fundamentally brilliant skincare and makeup. That's like a secondary thing. You should know that that's not the most important thing we do, because we should know how to do that. But the most important thing we do is we know you as women. The third thing is that we want to change the language of beauty. So there is language we've grown up on, which is about anti-aging and leaning into perhaps the insecurities of women. Mm-hmm. Now, there's main things that we worry about as women. At the moment, I have a neck product which sells every 15 seconds around the world, because it actually does help shift your neck. But I feel I can talk about that saying your neck might feel X. I'm not saying you feel X. When I talk about you, I want to talk about when you look in the mirror, do you feel tired or full of energy? Because that, to me, it's not a question of be beautiful, because we can feel ugly inside sometimes. It's a question of, do I have what I need to get through my day, or do I have what I need to really super succeed in my day? But how can we then give you that? So the language we talk about is, bring out your inner light. Don't dim your light. These are words that we're beginning to use in the next few months that we've believed. We always had be your best ... And the ... was important because it was your interpretation of what makes you feel your best. And beauty is about how you feel. It shouldn't be defined on how you look to other people. It should be defined on how you look to yourself and how that makes you feel.
Our favorite tagline that we have is, "You're the power, wear the suit."
You're the power, wear the suit. I love that. That's so good.
Very similar to what
How
you're
long
saying.
did it take you to get to that?
This came 2 years ago, so
That's
8 years
great.
into our journey, but
You're
it's
the
my
power,
favorite,
wear
and
the
I think
suit.
it's very
really good.
consistent with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Our overarching filter is confidence. How do we give women confidence? And we all know the feeling of putting on an outfit and having our makeup done and just feeling at our best when that happens. And yes, they work together, how we feel on the inside and how we feel on the outside. And there's science to that, know. So we've touched on a lot of this already, but can you leave our listeners with some advice, specifically the entrepreneurs who want to get their brand off the ground, but need capital or support or resourcing, or any advice you want to give?
I think at the very beginning, people invest in the entrepreneur more than the idea. They need to know you will so look after their money and that you might have a chance of succeeding, because there's lots of good ideas out there, but you need the propelling of that idea to get to a place of potential success. So what are you doing to show somebody they should believe in you? And what can you show that you've done before which shows success? And that might not be in another business, but it might be some things you have done in your life that show perseverance, resilience, and success, because that's all they've got to go on sometimes. So they need to see it, and you need to highlight it so they can think, okay, I can see, even though I can't even get my head around her idea, I can see that if anyone's going to do it, she could do it. Because you invest in people.
Yeah, I agree completely. Okay, we've come to the end of our episode, and that means it's time for my favorite segment, Would You Rather? You ready?
Yeah.
Would you rather have a luxurious morning routine or get out the door in 5 minutes?
I can do both.
Would you rather go back to school to learn a new skill or teach what you know to a class of newcomers?
Go back to school and learn a new skill.
Would you rather only answer emails with emojis or only answer calls on FaceTime?
I love only answering calls on FaceTime because I want to see people. I do it all the
Felt
time.
like that would be your response. That's excellent. Would you rather pitch or be pitched a business idea?
Be pitched.
Would you rather dress up or dress down for work?
Dress up.
Would you rather buy impulsively or let something sit in your cart?
I think I know fashion enough to buy impulsively.
Would you rather take a meeting at 8 a.m. on a Monday or 4 p.m. on a Friday?
8 a.m. on a Monday.
Would you rather accidentally leave your mic unmuted or your camera on?
I have probably in the past to some rather detrimental front newspaper headlines. Naked men in the background. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is that a real thing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Would you rather start? That's great. That's actually a really good example. I always say mic, or no, camera off, mic unmuted. No, wait, I don't remember. Mic has to be off for me.
Yeah.
Would you rather start a career in fashion, beauty in the 90s or in the present day?
Present day, for sure.
Thank you for being here. What I want to say is that you are a masterclass in really showing that it's not a zero-sum game, and that both can be true. You can be successful and also use your success to platform other people. And that's what we try so hard to do. But I just feel like you are such a living, breathing, walking success story of that. So thank you for everything you've done for me, but for all of us. And I'm excited about what you're building at Trinny London.
It's been such joy to talk to you because I first saw you, I told you this morning, but I saw you on New York Today talking before the election in your pink suit. And I thought, I want to meet that woman, and yet here we are sitting here now. How fantastic is that?
I love that so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that also says a lot about you. You are entrepreneurial through and through, but the fact that you saw that segment and then connected the dots to the point where we are now together, but you went into our store immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Work Friends, a podcast from Argent. Listen and follow on all podcast platforms and subscribe to the Argent YouTube channel for more clips and bonus content. Plus, email your work questions and dilemmas at workfriends@argentwork.com for a chance to have one of our amazing guests weigh in with advice. I'm Sally Christensen, and we'll see you next time.
Work Friends.
Work Friends is produced by Gina Marinelli with editing by Ryan Woldoff. Our theme music is by Karina De Piano and Melanie Naima. This episode was recorded at Podstream Studios in New York, New York.